Story. Windows of change. How our brains evolve from childhood to adulthood. Critical periods versus lifelong plasticity. When we're children, the world feels like magic. We can pick up new languages just by hearing them, learn to ride a bike in an afternoon, and absorb information like a sponge. But as we grow older, something shifts. Learning feels harder. We forget names more easily, and many of us begin to believe the myth that the window of change has closed. But what if that window never truly closes? What if, even in adulthood, the brain retains the ability to reshape, adapt, and reinvent itself? That's the story of critical periods and lifelong plasticity, a tale that begins in infancy but never really ends. Part 1. The baby. Who could hear everything? Let's start at the beginning, literally. When a baby is born, their brain is a masterpiece of openness. Neuroscientists call this stage a critical period, a time when the brain is so plastic, so flexible, that it's hungry for experience. Take language. Newborns can hear every sound from every language in the world: Japanese, Swahili, English, Arabic, you name it. Their brains haven't yet specialized. But by around 10 to 12 months, their neurons begin to prune, trimming away unused connections and strengthening the ones that match the sounds they hear most often. This is why a Japanese baby raised in Tokyo gradually loses the ability to distinguish the R and L sounds in English, while an English baby keeps it. It's not that the Japanese baby's brain can't hear the sound, it simply reorganizes itself to prioritize the sounds that matter most in its environment. This pruning is not loss, it's refinement. The brain is optimizing itself for the world it lives in, and that's the essence of a critical period, a window when certain skills, like language, vision, or emotional bonding, are most easily shaped. Part 2. The girl who could see twice now. Imagine this. A little girl named Amara was born with a cataract in one eye, making her blind on that side. She grew up hearing sounds and playing like other kids, but her parents didn't realize how little she could see. When doctors finally removed the cataract at age 6, everyone expected her vision to recover, but it didn't, at least not fully. You see, the critical period for vision occurs in the first few years of life. During that time, the brain learns how to interpret visual signals. Once that window closes, it becomes much harder, though not impossible, to rewire those pathways. Amara's brain had already assigned other functions to the area meant for her blind eye. Yet, here's where the story gets fascinating. With therapy, visual exercises, tracking lights, mirror training, Amara's vision improved beyond what anyone expected. The older belief was that once a critical period ended, the brain stopped changing. But new research has proven otherwise. Even years after the critical window, neuroplasticity can reopen those doors with effort, repetition, and the right stimulation. Amara's recovery was slow but remarkable. Her brain didn't just give up, and it adapted. It learned again, differently this time. Part 3. The teen brain, a second critical period. Fast forward to adolescence. If early childhood is about learning how to see, talk, and walk, the teenage years are about learning how to feel, decide, and belong. The adolescent brain is like a construction zone, pruning old connections, strengthening emotional circuits, and rewiring how we process risk and reward. This is another critical period, one for identity, empathy, and independence. Teenagers often get a bad reputation for being impulsive or moody, but that's not because they're broken. It's because their prefrontal cortex, the part that handles reasoning, is still under construction, while their emotional centers are firing at full strength. During this window, experiences, friendships, trauma, love, failure carve deep grooves into the brain's wiring. Those emotional memories shape how adults respond to stress, intimacy, and change later in life. But here's what's beautiful. This period, too, is guided by neuroplasticity. Teenagers don't just react. Their brains are literally learning how to feel. Part 4. The adult brain, from windows to doors now. Let's talk about adulthood, where most people assume the story ends. There's a persistent myth that after a certain age, our brains stop changing. That's why people say things like, "I'm too old to learn a language," or "old dogs can't learn new tricks." But neuroscience says otherwise. While critical periods close, the brain never loses its ability to change. Instead, the way it changes evolves. In adulthood, the brain's plasticity becomes more selective. Not gone, but deliberate. It's less like wet clay and more like marble, harder to shape, but still moldable with the right tools and persistence. Let me tell you about Maria, a 60-year-old widow who decided to learn piano after her husband passed away. At first, her hands trembled over the keys, her rhythm offbeat, her memory foggy. But she kept practicing. Months later, her brain scans showed increased gray matter density in the motor cortex and hippocampus, the very regions tied to coordination and memory. Maria's story reveals something profound. Even when critical periods close, lifelong plasticity keeps us capable of transformation. It's slower, yes, but no less powerful. Part 5. How lifelong plasticity actually works. So how does the adult brain manage to keep learning? It does so through experience-dependent plasticity, the ability to rewire based on what we repeatedly do. Every time you learn a new skill, make a decision, or challenge yourself, you're sculpting your brain. Neurons that fire together wire together. When you learn French at 40, your brain doesn't need a critical period. It needs consistency. When you take up meditation, your prefrontal cortex thickens, strengthening focus and emotional control. When you pick up a musical instrument, your brain builds new maps for rhythm and coordination. And when you step outside your comfort zone, mentally or emotionally, your brain literally changes shape to meet the demand. It's not that neuroplasticity disappears with age. It just requires more deliberate effort. Children learn automatically. Adults learn intentionally. And that's where the real power lies. Part 6. When experience reopens critical windows, here's where things get really exciting. Recent research shows that certain experiences can reopen critical periods, even in adults, for example. Music training can reopen auditory plasticity, helping adults learn new sounds. Immersive language learning can reignite the brain's phonetic sensitivity. Therapy and psychedelics, in clinical research settings, are being studied for their ability to reopen emotional plasticity, helping adults unlearn a trauma and build new emotional patterns. Think of it like this. The brain doesn't just age and it responds. Give it novelty and it wakes up. Give it repetition and it strengthens. Give it challenge and it adapts. We're not at the mercy of our biology. We're partners in shaping it. Part 7. The cost of a closed mind. Of course, there's a flip side. Just as the brain can rewire positively, it can also reinforce negative patterns. Habits of fear, cynicism, or avoidance create their own neural ruts. That's why adults sometimes feel stuck. The pathways of self-doubt, overthinking, or procrastination become deeply grooved through repetition. But neuroplasticity cuts both ways, and that means it can be reversed. New thoughts, new habits, new perspectives can gradually override old circuitry. The question isn't whether your brain can change, it's whether you'll give it a reason to. Part 8. A bridge across. Lifetimes, let's bring it all together. Critical periods give children their incredible capacity to absorb. Lifelong plasticity gives adults their power to adapt. Children learn fast but without wisdom. Adults learn slower but with purpose. And somewhere between those two stages lies the secret to growth, a balance between openness and discipline, curiosity and patience. If childhood is a spark, adulthood is the flame you keep alive. Our brains were never meant to be fixed. They were built to evolve, from birth until our very last breath. Final reflection: the teacher and the student. I once met an elderly man named Henry, 82 years old, who was learning Italian. When asked why, he smiled and said, "Because I've already lived one life in English. I want to live another in Italian." That's the spirit of lifelong plasticity. The belief that it's never too late to open new windows in the mind. And maybe that's what makes us human, our ability to keep reshaping who we are. Again and again, closing message to viewers. If you've ever told yourself you're too old to start over, too set in your ways, or too far behind, let this be your reminder. Your brain is still listening. It's still learning. It's still waiting for you to give it something new to do.